Economic cooperation at the forefront of the Trump administration's agenda. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan paving the way for trade negotiations with the United Kingdom as he leads a bipartisan congressional delegation in Europe this week. Watch.
Now that Article 50 has been invoked, the UK and the EU will determine the best path forward over the course of these negotiations. We want the parties to come together and strike a lasting agreement. A strong UK-EU relationship is in all of our best interests. The United States stands ready to forge a new trade agreement with Great Britain as soon as possible so that we may further tap into the great potential between our two people.
Joining me right now is a British Member of Parliament and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond. Chancellor, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Right before you got on the plane to come here, you actually had a meeting with the Speaker.
That's right, with the Speaker and his whole delegation.
Tell us how it went.
Well, we had a really good discussion. We very much appreciate the sentiment that he's just expressed there on your tape, that the US is ready to do a trade deal with the UK as soon as we're free of our obligations under the EU treaty, as soon as we're out of membership. Our economies work very closely together already, and the scope to do a trade deal that will benefit both of us is obvious, and it's huge.
What might that trade deal look like? I mean, what are the most important elements of a deal between the U.S. and the UK, understanding, obviously, that this is not taking shape yet?
Sure. I mean, the important thing about any bilateral trade deal is it has to work for both parties. It has to benefit both of us. And we're both facing the same challenges as the world economy changes, as the balance of economic power shifts towards Asia, as new technologies come along. We both have those challenges of protecting jobs, protecting growth, ensuring that our people have the right skills, that we have the capital to invest, that we have the infrastructure, so that we can be at the forefront of the next set of technological changes, the so-called fourth industrial revolution, making sure that we protect the living standards of British and American people.
Do you feel that the U.S. has been supportive to the UK's plans?
Yes, yes, we very much appreciate the support that we've had from President Trump and the administration as we go into these negotiations with the EU.
And when you look at the EU, what are the important countries or trade deals, bilateral deals, that you're hoping to achieve there? Because you want to be able to sell to the broader open market, right?
Sure. I mean, the UK does about 45% of its total trade with the European Union countries. And as we leave the European Union, what we hope to achieve and what we're discussing with our partners in Europe is a free trade agreement. So although Britain will no longer be part of the European Union, we will still have free trade between the UK and the European Union, but we'll be free to strike our own deals with old friends and partners and allies around the world. And of course, the US is our most important ally and partner.
And it's a very similar mentality. I mean, President Trump has repeatedly called for a renegotiation of trade agreements in favor of fair deals for the U.S. Here's what he told me last week about the possibility of a reciprocal tax to level the playing field. I sat down with him last week in the Oval Office.
We have countries, Maria, that charge us, our companies, 100% tax if they sell a motorcycle, or if they make it in America, they make it in the United States, they sell it to various countries. They sell very little because the tax is 100% in some countries. The tax is 50%, 30%, 40%. But if they make a motorcycle and they sell it back into the United States, they have no tax. Now, do you think that's fair? And do you think that's smart? So I love the idea of reciprocal. You can call it a reciprocal or a matching tax or a mirror tax. There are numerous terms. When you say reciprocal, nobody fights you. When you say, I'm going to charge a 10% or a 20% border tax, everyone goes crazy because they like free trade.
What do you think about that, Chancellor? I mean, the U.S. right now is trying to figure out how it can raise revenue somehow. You know, the president has said, he's been very clear, I don't like the idea of a border adjustment tax, but maybe they put a tax in the trade part of the deal and keep all this border adjustment tax out of a tax plan. What's your take on that?
Yeah, and we had a good discussion about this with the congressional delegation in London yesterday. The first thing is, as the president said, if a trade agreement's going to work, if trade is going to work, it's got to work for both parties, and that means it has to be on a fair basis. So we absolutely understand that. And because we are very similar economies, the UK and the US, both high-wage, high-technology, advanced economies, we don't face many of the kind of problems that the president was talking about there, which is typically the kind of challenge you face when a developed economy is dealing with a developing economy, and you have a kind of different structure.
Yeah, that's a very important point. So do you think the president's views on trade do you believe them?
We absolutely understand what the President is trying to do, and we understand that the structure of taxation that the US has at the moment is not helpful to achieving those objectives. So we understand why you're having this debate, and obviously the whole world is watching with bated breath as to where you're going to come out on this, what the decision is going to be.
Well,